Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon from wherever you are tuning in. My name is Joe, and I am your host for today. Worryingly, I don't seem to be able to hear myself. So I'm going to quickly make sure my sound is working fine. I can hear myself. There we go. We're all good. Excellent. Cool. Well, welcome to the Raise.dev Hacktoberfest Helpdesk. So my name is Joe, and I'm the community manager here at Raise.dev. And we are here to help you with your questions and your issues this Hacktoberfest. The Raise.dev Hacktoberfest Helpdesk is an initiative to provide a resource to you as contributors as you're trying to land your pull requests and make your way to that big goal of the 4 or 5 pull requests. I can never remember what the number is. We are here to help. So if you have any questions, big or small, you can ask them at the help desk and we will get you the answers you need. If you have any questions, you can submit them to our help desk submission form at raise.dev Hacktoberfest. The URL should be down here below. From that URL, you can also subscribe for notifications. We'll send you an email every day with who's going to be on the stream for the day and the times that the stream is going live. We are streaming 3 times a day, every day in Hacktoberfest. So you can get that schedule emailed directly to you by subscribing on the website, or alternatively, you can also find our schedule here on Twitch at twitch.tv/raisedevs/schedule. We will be watching the chat, so please do ask questions and stick questions in the chat. As Phase and Overload has been very kind to point out, yes, I need a haircut. I missed the window where the COVID cases where I live got low enough to go out for a haircut, and now they've started to rise again. So that's it. this is my head now. This is what I'm going to look like through until the end of the year, until I am consumed by Fringe. So please do throw your questions into that chat. We will get to them. And if you have any questions that are abstractly about Hacktoberfest or being a developer or open source, or specifically for our special guest, we will be able to get those to you. Our guest is already taunting me from the chat, so this is going to be wonderful. So I'm going to bring on our guest. Just before I do that, for those of you who haven't heard of Raise.dev before, we launched just this past week. We are brand new, and what we are is a service to help you level up your software engineering career. Whether you are looking for your first job, looking to get a new job, looking to get a promotion, or looking to reach a particular goal, Raise.dev will be able to help you with our expert coaches. While we're in early access, our service is free, so you can sign up for a session with our coaches. Right now, you can go to raise.dev to apply, and we will get you hooked up with one of our coaches. Okay, my hair is not going to be the topic of this live stream. Let's bring on our special guest for the day. Everyone, please welcome Eddie to the show. How are you doing, Eddie?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, wonderful. We've got a good start to the morning. Love to be reminded that I look like a ball of hair. So Eddie, do you want to introduce yourself to the lovely chat?
Sure. Hi, everyone. And just want to say, Joe, thank you so much for having me on your live stream. I'm really excited to be here, and I'm really excited to hear what questions and challenges that people are having. I can't wait to get into that discussion. Yeah, so a really quick overview from me. I've been a full stack software engineer for over 15 years. I'm self-taught. I did do an electronic engineering background, but I did really hate coding back then because it was really theoretical. It didn't make sense. It was all this theory that you didn't really put into practice. And so then after uni, a year went by and I went to a hackathon with a friend right. And I was just converted. I was just like, this is awesome. Why didn't they show us this at uni? I would have loved coding. I would have actually made more of an effort rather than trying to avoid all those modules.
Right.
So my life took an amazing turn. And ever since then, I've really never worked a day in my life because I really love what I do. And then about 10, 12 years ago, I got into open source, and the landscape was so different back then. I know we're probably going to dig more into that, but it was very different. Sure. And I know there are challenges nowadays for open source. Don't get me wrong. And I'm really looking forward to talking about the current day challenges. Back then, we didn't have GitHub, so it was a lot more difficult. But I still, persevered, still went through that, and I'm so glad I did. And a few years ago, started a YouTube channel where I do live streams and videos on how to get people into open source, the benefits of it, upskilling, learning, networking, improving their communication skills, and then they can get the better jobs and better money. And my biggest regret in all my 15 years is not starting open source sooner and not starting my YouTube channel sooner. That's my only regret.
Yeah.
I'm glad I've done it now because I've met so many amazing people.
Yeah, which actually kind of brings us to where we met, which was at a very, big open source event. I think we were talking about this before the stream, that the last time I think we bumped into each other in person was MozFest 2017, I think, which I'll always remember because you showed up to the open internet space, I think was where I was, or the community space. I can't remember which one I was. You rocked up with your own custom GitHub swag, which was amazing.
I bought this one, though. This one I bought.
Yeah, that one I recognize. I have that sewn into a t-shirt blanket somewhere. But yeah, thank you for sharing your story. I definitely, and there's a couple of folks in the chat who I already recognize will feel this as well. I had a very similar experience where going through computer science at uni, and then going enjoying it and having a certain course set on life and thinking I was going to join Accenture and do Java or something, and then going to a hackathon and suddenly being like, oh, wow, okay, there is so much more out there that I didn't know about. And also very much having my life trajectory changed by hackathons and the things I picked up there. So that is awesome to hear. So we are going to, I think Matt means in-ear monitor, Eddie.
Oh, yes. Right. Okay. I hadn't heard that abbreviation before. Yes, I have got one. I'm trying to hide it. So I've got the camera tilted slightly this way. I'm trying to use this
You've
screen.
Been rumbled already.
I've got a few screens, so I'm trying to use that screen more.
Honestly, Eddie set up when he rocked up this morning. He was like, oh yeah, I've got this. I've got a button that does this, and I've got the screen share, and I've got this thing loaded. I was like, do you want to produce this show? This is.
If people want it in the corner, I can leave it in the corner.
Yeah, which is a great recommendation. You did mention your video work on your YouTube channel. I do just want to briefly start by plugging Eddie's YouTube channel for anyone watching, because Eddie's YouTube channel has so many fantastic resources about like specific topics. I remember, I think some of your first videos are like getting into Phaser and that kind of thing, the JavaScript game engine, but also an enormous series on like high level open source, how to make contributions, how to make good quality contributions, where to start. You put out a video about Hacktoberfest in particular the other day. Am I right?
That's correct. Yes, I did. And I'll have some more coming out soon as well.
And one of my favorite things about these videos is the thumbnails are just like on point. They're so good. Like, there's like a certain not millennial aesthetic. It's not what I'm looking for. But there's like a certain aesthetic to them that's like almost like, what's that wave?
I really appreciate
like, new
that
wave kind of thing. Yeah, it's great.
I really appreciate that because I put most of my effort on the video. And when I get to the thumbnail, I'm like, I've had enough. I just need to rush it through. Yeah.
Anyway, let's get into talking about Hacktoberfest. So let's start with something at a I guess a higher level for folks who are tuning in. First stream of the day. Folks who aren't aware, what is Hacktoberfest? What are we here to do?
So, shall I answer that? Do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
Yes,
yeah,
let's do it. Okay, if I talk too much, do cut me short.
Oh,
so, Hacktoberfest. So it's important to get, encourage people into open source. And I do that, as we said, all the time. But I think Hacktoberfest, people get excited about the free swag and then they want to get involved. And as I mentioned before, I want to reiterate that my biggest regret is not getting into open source sooner. And I get a lot of messages from people saying, thank you so much for encouraging me to open source. It's changed my life. So I think it's a really great initiative. Yes, there have been some challenges with spammy pull requests, but I'm talking about the kind of the value add. It's not about, I get messages, people say, I've only done 3 lines changes. Is that big enough? I'll try and make it 10. It's like, no. Does it add value? The amount of lines doesn't matter. I've seen pull requests with 50 lines, but not one of those lines adds value to the project. So it's about adding value to the project and then collaborating with people and learning. So I think it's 4 pull requests this year that people have to do. And they are being a bit stricter, and you do have to, they do have to add value, and they can be marked as spam and therefore be excluded. So I think it's important for everyone to add value to the project. Yeah,
I actually want to jump in on that value point because this is something that I've seen a little bit of discussion on that. I guess this is going a little bit backwards into open source and what is a good open source contribution in some ways, but there's a lot of kind of general debate amongst developer communities around like what is a valuable open source contribution. And for a long time, just as kind of like developer folklore, there's this like idea that documentation is underserved and people don't make good, people don't contribute to documentation enough. And so that's one of the things that Hacktoberfest has always encouraged and has been really great. That like, hey, if you're new to open source or you're like trying to find a new project, a really easy way to enter is through documentation and making small improvements to documentation. And I think one of the unfortunate things I've seen some reactions to some of the spam issues that you mentioned with Hacktoberfest this year is people again bringing out that kind of like discouraging people from making small documentation changes. But to your point that like it's about impact, not the size of the change. Like a typo fix in a README can be the difference between like a command that works and a command that doesn't, right? So like that focusing on impact and like not worrying if your submission is a small typo fix is and focusing on the impact of that typo fix instead, I think is a really important one to shifting that conversation away from like code versus docs and into making sure you do good contributions. So I think that was a really fantastic point. So you mentioned there that you regretted not getting started with open source earlier. What was your eventual start to open source? Like, what was your first project? How did you get introduced to it?
My first open source contribution was a documentation change. I think I fixed the typo. Awesome. I think people start like that, and I think that's why it's important to encourage people. Yeah, I think most people started like that, and I think it's important to encourage people to say that was great, do some more. And if they just continue doing that for the next few years, it benefits the community, but doesn't benefit them. I think they need to challenge themselves a little bit each time. But mine was on Zen framework, a PHP framework at the time that I was using, and there was a typo in the docs, and I had to sign all these forms to make a contribution, and my contribution took, I don't know, a few minutes, but the actual to get it over the line took me like ages. There were pages and pages of stuff to read, of licensing. I had to sign that I wasn't going to charge them for this,
like contributor license agreement kind of thing.
It was just a nightmare. And I really understood why at the time a lot of people didn't get involved. The barrier to entry was really, really high.
Right.
And then I made a few more documentation changes. I think they got bigger,
Yeah.
from like one word to like one sentence to actually there's a missing command in like
Right.
run command 1, command 2, command 3, but actually was a 2B in certain
Mm-hmm.
situations. So I put an optional step in there, and
Mm-hmm.
I really got into it. And I started making coding improvements
Right.
by adding automated tests
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
helping increase the code coverage. And then I
Right.
started making code improvements, and yeah, it just snowballed from there. It
That's
was
amazing.
really good, really really good.
Yeah, and it's a fascinating journey as well, because you you're like the path you followed there went through some things that are like some of the big things that get neglected alongside code bases often. Like you started with docs, again, an area that's like very underserved. You moved on to tests, another area that's very underserved, and all this before you got into making code changes. So my next question to you was going to be like, approaching that project as a quote unquote outsider. You mentioned like the intimidation factor of the CLA and all those kind of things. Like, what steps did you take, or like what did the project take to help like welcome you in it and bring you into that project?
I think on a couple of my like initial PRs, some of them went better than others, not because of the
Right.
changes that I made, but because of the help. So I
Right.
think at the beginning they threw me lots of links and lots of docs to read, and I don't really like reading, so I love watching YouTube videos. And so
Right. Right.
that
Right.
took me a long time to kind of read through it over, I don't know, a couple of weekends. And I mean, it was a lot of terminology that I didn't really understand, being legal stuff. And I was just like, oh. So that was really hard and scary. And then I think on my next contribution, or maybe my third contribution, I was
Yeah.
making a test change. And
Right.
then people were really grateful for it, but they came back with all these suggestions. And did I run this tool? Did I do this? Had I thought about this? And I was bombarded with people who
Yeah.
wanted to help. I mean, it
Yeah.
wasn't negative stuff, but I have so many things to look at that
Yeah.
it actually also was quite scary. So that's why, like, for example, in my Discord, if someone else replies, I don't always I try not to do a reply. One, because I want the
Right.
community to help other people in the community. I think it's a great way to learn. But also, I
Yeah.
don't want to put the other person off, that they're getting bombarded with messages from
For
different points of
sure. For
view,
sure.
unless they
Yeah.
ask for it. Because different points of view are great and do add
Yeah.
value, but it's having the right time. So yeah,
Right.
that was quite hard. And I think I took a break for a little bit after that. I thought, wow, that just took up too much of my time,
Yeah.
too much energy. And then I got back into it again.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, when GitHub came around, things really accelerated. We went from SVN to Git, which was a huge, huge
Yeah.
improvement. And the
And obviously
platform
the
was just,
centralized hub. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Awesome. So there's a couple of things there. Sorry, this is when you know things are getting serious, folks. When I crack out the notebook, because I need to keep track of all the different things I want to ask. That's when you know things are getting serious. So I think a point. So we spoke a little bit about the spam with Hacktoberfest this year, and I want to go into that a little bit and loop that round to talking about how you, as someone who's contributing to Hacktoberfest, can help maintainers and help make sure that your PR doesn't get marked as invalid. And I think this is a great segue into that, where that initial kind of like question and response to the maintainers about like, hey, have you done this? Have you run these tests, etc., leads into a big set of, I guess, like what we could call open source etiquette, or like pull request etiquette or pull request hygiene or something, where it's like you're approaching a new project for the first time. What are some of the things you should look out for and some of the things you should do before engaging with that project? So like one of the ones I always recommend, which is a real easy starting point, is and it's a great thing of what, like, to go to your point about GitHub appearing made this all a lot easier. GitHub supports special classes of files, for example, that they expose in the interface in different ways. And one of those is a file called contributing. So it could be contributing.markdown in the repository. And when a repository has a contributing.markdown, it appears in all kinds of places. When you open an issue, when you open a pull request, and that file is used for instructions. So if the project has like, hey, this is how we like contributions to be made, these are our guidances, they'll put them in the contributing.markdown. So if you're a new contributor, that's the first thing you should be checking. Do you have any other like easy tips for people who are approaching a project for the first time and like trying to help very earnestly and make it clear that they are there to help and make a meaningful contribution?
Yeah, I have a few tips for people, definitely. So let me try and start at the beginning and kind of work through the process.
I feel like I have just asked you to summarize your entire YouTube channel. So
yeah, I'll give like a high level summary of it. If people want more details, they know where to find me. So I would definitely recommend people raising an issue before doing the work. One, you get the extra green square on GitHub, but also you can start the conversation. The project maintainer can then say, look, I don't want this change, or I do want this change. I think a lot of people don't do that, which is what I've noticed over the last few days when I've asked people to raise an issue so we can track the conversation. People say, "Oh, but I don't want to give other people the idea who then when will do it." And it is, I do get that challenge because I have seen people raise issues, raise the pull request, and then it hasn't been merged yet. But someone else comes along and goes, "Oh, I've also done this. Here's my pull request." And it's like, but it's done. It doesn't add value redoing someone else's work unless the first person did it completely wrong. But we want to help them, and then really the other person in the community should jump into that PR and make suggestions on how they can improve it rather than trying to steal the idea. But definitely raise the issue. Don't be worried that people are going to steal the idea. Have that conversation, get some feedback. Therefore, it just reduces, I think, a lot of waste that way. The maintainer's time, the contributor's time. And I think the contributor needs to put themselves in the maintainer's shoes. Like I wake up the last 2 days for over 200, actually today was over 250 GitHub notifications of things that issues I have to go through, pull requests I have to go to, and comments I need to reply to. And you can definitely see you naturally favor the ones where someone's made a bit of an effort. I'm not talking about in the code changes, but they haven't just said, I want to improve docs, like something really generic. Like what part do you want to improve? I'm sure there are improvements that are needed everywhere, but what part? Like they're making me think about it and trying to read between the lines, whereas the issues or pull requests where they explicitly say what's going to be done or what they're talking about is really clear, then that really helps, right? That's got my attention. I want to spend not more time on it, probably less time on it, but I want to get it out the way because it's made it a lot easier for me.
Right. And you have the context about what's happening and what they're trying to achieve, right?
Exactly. Or when someone raises an issue saying, "Oh, I'll do what you said, Eddie, from Twitter discussion." I'm like, I've had so many Twitter discussions. Which one are you talking about? And sometimes their usernames don't match their username. So even when I try and search them on Twitter, and I just end up saying, look, you've got to provide more context, or I just leave it. I wait for them to come back and give more information. So definitely make it easier for the maintainer by raising an issue with having context, like you said. And then when you do your pull request, learn Markdown. A lot of people don't realize what Markdown is. And this goes for the issue as well, and also for comments. But I just see like a title, then, I don't know, a few example code, and then, I don't know, maybe a link or something. And it's all just squished together in the corner. And it's has to then again kind of pick through it, try and understand what the person means. And there's just so many great ways in GitHub to use Markdown, to link to issues or link to code, or even include code. It's possible to get a permalink, I think it's called. And then GitHub will take the selected lines of code from that permalink and bring it in. And there's just so many things people should do. And I think that again, makes it easier for the maintainer. It means their PR is more likely to get merged.
For sure.
And I think if a lot of people get worried that if they get lots of comments on their PR, that it's unlikely to get merged. It's not. So I've seen smaller PRs usually get more comments, and it's not because they're worse, but it's because people can actually kind of really check it. Whereas bigger PRs either get ignored or get less comments because either they trust the person and they say it's so big, which is really a bad thing. It should get reviewed properly. But also, bigger PRs hang around for longer. I have people messaging me saying, oh, my PR's been open for 3 days, but you've merged these 5 other ones. They've been only open for a few hours. It's like, or it takes me 5 minutes to review theirs. Your one is so big and it covers like 5 issues. It's going to take me an entire day to review it.
For sure.
And I'll just leave it till I got more time, which may never happen. So it's important to have the PR do one thing and one thing well. Don't try and include something. So if there's, I suppose, I come up with like a crude example, if there's a missing step in documentation and you want to reformat all the documentation because it's not following the standards or it's inconsistent, then do those in 2 separate PRs. Because if the maintainer doesn't want to merge the say the reformatting
one change,
then they're going to block the whole PR. So whereas if you do 2, then one might get blocked, but one might get merged.
That makes a lot of sense, for sure.
And don't branch off your existing branches to do a PR, because your second PR will contain the first PR. And so it's really important that when people do a fork of a project, they don't make any changes in the default branch. If the default branch is main or master, then create a branch and do your changes in there. And then if you want to make more changes, go back to the default branch Ideally, update it just in case there's been any new updates, and then create a new branch to raise a new pull request. Therefore, the pull requests are independent.
That makes total sense. And it's also just like, as an aside, also kind of just good coding practice, right? Like if you're working on different features or parts or things that touch different code bases, the whole purpose of Git and Git branches is to help you keep those different things separate, and so that like the code, the changes you're making are all in context of the overall like theme of the PR. Yeah, that makes total sense. And sorry, I interrupted you. You're going to go on to another point, I think.
No, that's fine. The other thing I really wanted to say was some projects aren't inclusive, and I've seen in the chat someone say my PR just got closed without a comment.
Yeah.
And that really bugs me as a project maintainer, as a contributor. That really bugs me that the maintainer just closes something without a comment. They really should add something. So my tip to people is, before you raise an issue or raise a pull request, check the closed issues and check the closed pull requests. See if the maintainers have been inclusive, and if they've closed it, that's fine. It's their project; they're allowed to do that. Have they written, thank you very much for this PR. We don't want this change. We suggest looking at these issues or whatever. Just trying to encourage that person to contribute to their project in the future, but that what contribution wasn't what they wanted, which is fine. Whereas if you just see loads of pull requests and issues just closed with no comments, then that's probably a project you don't want to contribute to. And it does put people off. People say, oh, I'm thick-skinned, it's fine. But imagine you do 3 pull requests to 3 different projects and they all get closed with no comment, then it is disheartening. And I do see people message me and say, look, what did I do wrong? Did I upset the person? And they'll send me a link and I'll look it up. And I just thought, well, there's nothing wrong with it. I'm guessing it wasn't a spammy pull request. I'm just guessing the maintainer didn't want that change. They didn't write that or encourage any future changes. So I recommend people do check that and see.
Yeah. That's another really fascinating point, because there's been a lot of this on the timeline as well, which I guess is like comes into almost a fundamental confusion about like what open source is. But like open source means the source is available. It means that like in some cases you can contribute to the source, but ultimately it's like any social convention that like what the maintainer is hoping to achieve by being open source is going to vary from project to project. And some maintainers, some projects, it's an open world, and if someone is using it and considers a feature and wants a feature in it, they can add it. Others, it's a very tightly curated project, and they have they want to avoid scope creep, or they want to keep within a certain, like they want features to be a certain amount of like requests before they add them. And so making sure that like what you're adding is actually, something that is first of all to a project that wants new features, full stop, and second of all something that they actually want is a great one. So like not only in terms of you mentioned they're looking through like past issues to see kind of like how the maintainers approach people, but I guess just like as a wider theme of that, like participate and use the project before you show up and contribute to it, right? Like the best open source contributions, or the best way I've always found to make open source contributions, and I think Wilhelm spoke about this yesterday as well, is to projects that you use. And so you understand the project, you understand its use cases, you understand what would make it better, and you are a user of that tool. So then when you contribute to it, you have a better idea of what the good contributions are going to be. So I have many things to touch on from this list of things you went down. So the other thing I want to talk about is you spoke about don't be scared or put off by like comments and reviews on your pull requests. And I think that's really important, because I think a pull request is often seen as the last step, that like you've opened an issue, or you've chosen an issue, you've fought the repository, you've done your code, and you open the pull request, and that's it. When actually the pull request is really the start of the conversation, right? It's the point where you go, hey, I've done a thing. Will you now, the maintainer, review this and let me know what you think? And during a pull request, you're going to run into all kinds of potential issues, like code standards and style. Like, does your code match the code they want? Does it work for everyone? Has it been tested? Has the documentation been updated? So yeah, huge agree on that point, that like once you've submitted the pull request, that isn't the end of that contribution, and you've still got some more work to do. And to that point as well, again, like a big thing that you said was like, the maintainer's got to review that stuff. It's going to take a lot of time. I think a lot of people in general, but doubly so during this time of year, forget that there's like a human at the other end of the keyboard who is managing this project. And a lot of open source projects are very like have very few maintainers for the number of users. Like a great one that was going around Twitter yesterday is SQLite. Really important project, used in everything. I think SQLite is like also installed on like every smartphone in the world now. Free maintainers, just free.
Wow.
Yeah, and they've maintained that project for like 15 or 20 years or something. And it's very similar to curl as well. Like curl is a key piece of internet infrastructure, the curl command, and that's like 2 maintainers up a mountain in Switzerland or something, if I remember the story correctly. And so when you do a PR, like, yes, it's aggravating to have that PR rejected, or to have someone say like, we don't want this feature. Yes, it's aggravating to have more work to do. But remember at the same time that like you're talking to a very busy, harried person who's probably, unless it's a corporate project, doing this in their free time.
That's a really good point. If I can just jump in there, you're right.
Go ahead.
People need to be aware. I think contributors to be aware that a lot of these projects are people doing it in their spare time, and it's not their day job. They're not getting paid to do it. So I love getting PRs on my projects, and if they are, on the borderline or on the fence of being a bit spammy, I can, lean on the kind of on the value side more.
Right.
But I think what makes it more difficult and pushes the same contribution over to the spammy side is when they tag me in the original issue and say I've raised the pull request. In the pull request, they tag me and say it's been 30 minutes. Why haven't you merged it yet? They send me a DM on Twitter. They'll send me a Discord DM every 30 minutes saying you haven't merged it yet. What's wrong with it? You haven't merged it yet. Here's the link. And I was thinking, I've got the notification and I've got a day job and I'll get back to this tonight. And then that one contribution, which originally, like I said, was on the fence, like it does add maybe a little bit of value. Could be, some people might consider it to be a bit spammy. So it's on the fence. I'll gladly accept that and write a comment and accept it. But then I've got 20 other messages from that person. And that now has pushed it over to more of a spammy, kind of pull request because of all the spam to go with it. I think people don't realize you've got to be patient. I always recommend to maintainers to try and reply within 12, 24 hours, even if you can't review it, but say, I'll review it this weekend so people are aware.
Give some expectations,
Exactly.
It can be very vague. I'm a big fan of not putting an explicit date on things. My favorite trick, and I'm very sorry if any of my clients are watching right now, my favorite trick is to say, I'll get that back to you early in the week, by which I mean no sooner than Thursday.
At least you're honest about it.
Yeah, vague timelines I think are very useful. Sorry, go on.
So I implore contributors just to be patient. Don't chase the person, because you're not the only person chasing, and it's not their job to do that open source project. Probably 99% of the time, you want to add value to the project and you want to help the maintainer. What I love is if people want to get on my radar, not only send me pull requests, but go review other pull requests and give your opinion. I love my community on YouTube and Discord, because I woke up this morning and I said I had over around 250 notifications from GitHub. A quarter of them had already been reviewed, and I was blown away by that. I was just like, wow. And so it was brilliant to see that from the community, and people send me messages. How can I be a moderator? How can I get added to this? Add value to the community, and you don't need to then ask. I'm going to approach people that you're adding great value. Yeah, exactly. And I can guarantee that every admin on our GitHub organization or moderator on Discord, none of them have ever asked to be that position. They've done such good value to the community that I've asked them.
For sure. So I want to answer a question we had and also give a brief shout out. We're very lucky to have Matt from the DigitalOcean community team here with us today. Matt, if you haven't seen, is the wonderful community manager who's working on Hacktoberfest and has been working really hard to help both maintainers and contributors navigate the spam issues. The spam issues are a little bit unusual this year due to various events, and everyone is doing their best to cope with them. And Matt and the team have been doing an absolutely fantastic job. And as someone whose full-time job is community in various capacities, I feel for and respect the work they're doing immensely. So coming off onto that point, onto something you just mentioned about your Discord, that's another great point, that the GitHub repository doesn't even necessarily have to be the first place you interface with the project, right? Like if you've got an idea for a contribution, or there's an issue open that you want to contribute to, it's really good practice to jump into whatever community space they have, whether that's IRC or Discord or Slack or something else, and just say hey, I'm interested in this PR or this issue. is there any existing work? Is there any particular things I should be aware of? I've read this piece of documentation. Would you be up for a chat about this? Make sure I'm doing it the right way. Just engage a little bit, And as you, to your point, engage sensibly. Don't spam them 30 times, but show willingness to help, be present in the community, and move forward in that kind of information gathering stage before you go ahead and do the PR. So to this person's pull request, that's what I got distracted after thanking Matt. So someone has asked, I made a pull request and the owner closed it without merging. Is it considered an invalid pull request for Hacktoberfest? I think what the answer I think is to this, and Matt, I'm very sorry if I've got it wrong. Please post in chat and I will correct it. It is not considered invalid if it's closed, only if it's marked with an invalid label. But the pull request will take a week to be counted. After a pull request is made, there is a time to be counted before it counts towards your Hacktoberfest time. That's the time that the maintainer can mark it invalid. So I think if they're closed, they are still okay. A pull request does not have to be merged to be counted towards the count. But if your pull request does have an invalid label on it, then it will not be counted. If it does have an invalid label on it, I hope the advice we've given you today in terms of navigating projects will help you make a pull request that doesn't get marked as invalid for the next one. Great, cool. Matt has clarified. So closed PRs are currently still considered valid, though those rules might change as the spam fighting continues. And best of luck in that fight. As I posted when we started up the channel, this channel has URLs disabled in the Twitch chat because spam is an unfortunate reality of the internet, and in everything that touches many people, it will occur. So all the best with that. So another thing that you mentioned that I think is a good one to get into in terms of GitHub features and communities. You mentioned inclusive projects and just being able to tell if a project is, has the vibe that you want through their other interactions with people. Is there anything else that you look for when you first land on a project that indicates it might be an inclusive space for you?
Yeah, I like it when projects have, say, templates for issues and for pull requests, because I think it just, again, lowers the barrier to entry and helps people get started. And I get upset when people don't use the template. Either they just leave the template as it is and you got all the placeholders, or they delete it and it's just blank. I'm not saying every section is important to whatever pull request issue they're raising. They should try and fill it in as much as possible. So again, it's a two-way street. I think it's maintainers lowering the barrier to entry for people to contribute, and then people, when they contribute, lowering the barrier to entry on their contribution for people to understand what's going on. And that really helps people's communication skills. Like when I interview people for my clients or for my projects, I can really tell if someone has contributed to open source before. Not only because of their GitHub account, because the way they would write an issue or a pull request description is so different to somebody who's only been in a closed source team. They'll do more things like WIP, work in progress label, kind of commits and all these other things. And they don't think about that. So that's again why I think open source is so valuable to people, not in addition to just the coding changes.
Right.
So the other things I look for is, have there been other contributors contributing? And then I also sometimes look at the recent contributors who have contributed and look at their GitHub accounts. Are they super duper, I don't know what the word is, like Linus Torvald kind of people who just,
right.
really awesome, or a lot more experience, or are there people who are newer into tech where the project is a bit welcoming? So I think that's important as well.
That makes sense. Yeah, for sure.
And also looking, are the people only contributing to this project? Are they the maintainers of the project? And if that's the case, then, and it's possible to see that if you go to the Insights tab and then go to, I have to check which one it is.
Do you want to show that? Have you got? Should we do this? Should we try the screen share thing?
Okay, yeah, sure. I can make that work. Let's have a look. So
this is where my comparatively simple setup is clashing with Eddie's very professional setup.
Because I want to do this.
He wants to do that. I mean, we can make that work.
Yeah. No, but I want you to stay on the screen. Can people see that?
Yeah. It is a
if not, okay, let's go back.
We'll do the manual screen share.
I'll do the
manual. Look at him zooming in and out there.
Oh, okay. And while I'm doing that, I'm figuring out how to screen share on
so
StreamYard.
Big button at the bottom, and if you mash that, I'll be able to add it.
People can see my social stuff. I'll just put that along the bottom there.
Cool. Oh, lovely.
Screen share. Okay, screen share. How do I pick a screen? The problem of having too many screens. Okay, no, we're good.
Excellent. Okay.
No, that's not good.
That.
There we go.
Perfect. There you go. Cool. Yeah, let's dive into an insights tab.
Awesome. So if I just pick one repo, I don't know, for example, this is my GitHub organization. If anyone wants to join it and get involved, let us know. So if I just pick one repository and then we go to insights, it's probably not going to look very good, but we have got various tabs down the side. So I clicked on the insights tab at the top and I got the, and there's various kind of tabs or links down the side. And one thing I always like to look at on a project is the community tab. You know, have they got, this is a bad example, so don't look at this. we're missing the issue template and the pull request template, but we've got the other things ticked. And I think, you know, if a project's got all these ticked, then you know they want contributors. I do want contributors for this project, by the way. And we actually had some
great. For me, a very important thing you've got ticked there is the code of conduct, which is a huge one.
You wouldn't believe it. It is actually, I don't know what the right word is, a small group of people are fighting something called no code of conduct, and they've actually written some, you know, awful posts on it, and they're trying to push it, which I think is awful. So yes, do check for the code of conduct.
A code of conduct is just like basically community guidelines for the repository, so it specifies the behavior that is expected, and usually it is exactly what you would expect. It's a policy that says, like, in this community, in this repository, in this project, we don't accept harassment or abuse of any individuals, and here's the kind of like the rules that follow with that and how we enforce that code of conduct. So it's a really important indicator of essentially if the project is being actively moderated. So yeah, it's great to see that you have them in your project, Ernie.
Thank you, always. And there are templates. So there are open source code of conduct you can use. You don't have to try and write. I think it scares a lot of people that they have to kind of write all this stuff. They don't. Yeah, there are templates you can kind of tweak and so on.
Yeah.
So yes, the other thing I was going to show, I've forgotten, so I'll come back to that.
Oh, it was insights, so you could see the types of contributors on the project, I think was what we got started here originally.
So if this page hasn't been looked at in a while, then it takes time to kind of number crunch it. But yeah, look at the contributors. Like, is there one or two main contributors who are the only ones contributing, or are there other people? So you can see, you know, in this one, for example, we've got quite a few other people. I can't pronounce this. Raisin 10. Thanks for the awesome pull request this morning as well, and the rest of the team. You know, it's great, but you can kind of see people getting involved when they can, right? Everyone's got families and jobs and so forth, but it's just when they've got time to make contributions. So
and this is such an important point, because this goes back to what we were talking about earlier about understanding what open source means to that project and that maintainer. That, like, if you open this tab up and there's like only 3 people who are on this list and they're all core project maintainers, like, that project is probably code available in that the code is visible and online for anyone to see and edit, but it may be not accepting outside contributions. And that is a totally valid and model of open source that does happen. And so this insights tab gives you an idea of, like, how open is this project outside contributions? Should I be opening pull requests against it? So yeah, thank you for showing us that. I'm very intrigued by this project, Eddie. What is EddieBot?
Well, it's for our Discord channel, so that we've got commands that people can use. Let me see if I can show you an example. For tips on open source, or for adding themselves some roles. So if they want some roles added, so you know who to ask, and then you can get kind of I'm trying to think. Added to, we've got a map project, and this links to that. So when I do live streams, for example, I've got it was just a real prototype that I knocked together in a live stream. But one example was, if you put a location on the bot in Discord, this will be behind me, and then in being live in real time, it will automatically zoom to that person on the map for 5 seconds, show them their profile picture, and they appear on the left. And so forth. So I have this behind me, like, happening in real time, and then it zooms out after 5 seconds until the next person puts the location. So we're just playing with lots of technologies with the community.
What is EddieBot written in? Is it using the Discord JS library, or?
It is, yes. So we've written it in TypeScript, but it is using the Discord JS library.
So we will later on in the day, off our last show today, we've got Will Russell coming on, and I'm very excited about that. I mostly want to geek out with Will Russell about Discord bots. So I'm very excited that you're also running a Discord bot. I've been dabbling with writing these myself.
You should. It's really awesome. And one of my most favorite features that I've added, and I know a lot of the community, a few people in the community don't like this.
Sure.
But I have got this bot, because everyone enters the community and says, "Hey guys," and it's always like guys. It really, really bugs me. So I wrote this, and it's from the config, it checks certain words and they're prepended and appended and so on. And it picks the word, if I bring out the config, you'll be able to see
like
it.
an alternative to guys that's more inclusive.
Yes, exactly.
Exactly.
I love that. So you've got the checks and then you've got the suggestions. So folks,
Wonderful.
people, everyone. And that's just, and people have started finding ways around it. Rather than hiya, they put 2 Y's or 2 A's at the end. So I need to start updating this, but it's really helped. But people have apologized and they have noticed a change.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of Slack channels that have this in. It's definitely something that's super welcoming and great. So if you don't mind, I'd love to like talk a little bit more. I'd love to hang around this project a little bit, and I'll be getting this for you later. Like how on the EddieBot, so one of the things that I first dealt with when I was writing a Discord bot was I was writing a Discord bot in a Discord I've got with some friends who are starting to get into coding. And the whole reason I was doing it was like, we all chat on Discord and I wanted to use it as a tool for them to be able to like learn to code. So I wanted to write it in a very easy, approachable way where if they wanted to add some functionality, it was like a plugin architecture, right? How have do you have anything like that with EddieBot? How have you approached, so you mentioned you had different functionality in scripts, like how is EddieBot architected?
We do actually, and I didn't make this improvement, so I can't take credit for it. Someone did this already, which I thought was really awesome. Someone contributed to this, and it was great. Yeah.
Awesome.
So there are some things we are changing with EddieBot in the next few weeks. We currently using Firebase and Firestore for the real-time database. But that actually, although it's really easy to get coding with that, it's really hard to get set up. They've got to create their own project. They've got to get all the private keys and all the rest. So actually,
you mean for people who are contributing when they try to run it like locally, it's hard for them to get a development environment set up. That makes sense. Okay.
Exactly. So we're going to move to Docker and going to move to something like Mongo. So there are some changes coming. But one of the things let me show you some code. That's a really good point. So we have these different command files, and these get included in the main file. But added some confusion. So someone created like a command handler, and all you have to do. So if I pick something, let me pick a small one. Let me see if this is very small. So they wrote. It's kind of like the adapter pattern, not quite.
Sure.
But what
I
would like
briefly explain the adapter pattern to folks in the audience who may not have encountered it.
Sure. Sorry, definitely a bad assumption.
No, it's all good. We're thinking of adding like a lingo check as we go along, because we all do it. Our first stream was me and Vapav talking about Haskell and Nix, and about halfway through I was like, no one knows what these things are, so it's all totally good.
If anyone doesn't know anything I say, or I say something wrong, whatever, just write in the chat and we'll bring it up. So with design patterns, they're not visual design patterns, they're usually architectural design patterns. And the Gang of Four wrote a book, I think like 20, 30 years ago, and they had, I think, about 30 or so design patterns that we still use today, and they underpin most applications. And there have been more design patterns since then. And so let me kind of explain what a design pattern is and why we need them. Rather than trying to reinvent the wheel each time, there are common coding practices that we can use, language independent. So if you learn it for one language like Java or JavaScript, it can be used in other languages. And the adapter pattern specifically is a really good example is when you go traveling, you get those adapter plugs. So our plug, so if I'm in the UK, so my plug is the 3-pin plug. But I can buy an adapter that goes on the end, and it has different. Sorry?
I said it's the best plug, by the way. Sorry.
Yes, it has different. I can press different buttons on it, or different like switches, and different pins come out for America or somewhere in Europe or wherever it is. And they might not all have have the things that are adjustable. I might have different kind of adapters that go on the end. They might be fixed. That's what I used to have a while ago. The whole point is I don't have to change the plug at the end of my cable. I can go use it in different countries. So the adapter pattern is effectively like an adapter. Or an example that is really good is the wrench. You just change the different sizes on the end.
Like the socket wrench.
Socket wrench, that's the one. Yes, and it makes that noise like I don't know, the clicking noise. I don't know. But yes, you change the different sizes. You don't have to have a whole handle for each one.
Right.
And so in this case, we did it's kind of a cut down version of the adapter pattern. It didn't have an interface. It wasn't so strict. That's one improvement I probably want to make, but it was still added value. So that's why we accepted it and merged it, and we can improve it later. And
amazing.
The way it was, certain exports. So each file that wanted to be included as a command needed to have an export description, export triggers, as in what was going to trigger this command, and an example usage of this command, and then the command itself.
Yeah.
And whatever you do in here just needed to return the embedded, which is like the message from on the Discord bot, so the title and all the other bits and pieces. And then now people have been able to add, as you can see, there's lots of different commands. People who want to do reminders, people who want to share on the stand-up channel what they're working on, what they did yesterday, what they're working on today, a bit of accountability. We've got some really great people that are really good at that.
It's amazing.
And get your stats, like what sort of stats have you contributed to the community? How many comments? So I've actually started collecting with a GitHub action, people's contributions, because I know GitHub squares are raising an issue, starting a discussion, or raising a pull request or a commit.
I think merging pull requests in there as well. It's like very, very code centric stuff, right?
It is, and I really think replying to someone's comment on an issue, reviewing a pull request, or commenting on someone's pull request, or commenting on a discussion really adds value. Or inline comments, I've started collecting those. So I have a custom GitHub action that is in the marketplace if anyone else wants to use it, and it collects those stats so people can get a bit of stats of how they've added value. We don't do anything with them just yet. We started the front end for that, but those are some awesome things. If I can add one last thing.
Please, you can add as many things as you want. This is your show.
It's people always ask how can they add value to a project, and I think a lot of projects don't run CI because maybe it's too complicated. They have the commands, so they, for example, like if you go to a project and you see they've got like a JavaScript project, for example, or TypeScript project, a package.json, and they'll have these script commands like running a linter. And the value that can be added is if you go to the Actions tab and you add a YAML file that just says, I don't know, checks.yaml, and run some of these commands on the project. And so a while ago, someone did that, and that was just added so much value to the project, because now on every commit or every push or every pull request, the linter will run. They didn't have to write the linter, they didn't have to add it to the project, but it just wasn't running every time. And I think that scares people. So it's really straightforward to add that. And you might see some other commands as well, and it might make sense.
I saw in your README that you were deploying using GitHub Actions as well, right?
Yes. So in this one, we've actually paused it because it was deploying to Azure, but we're actually changing to DigitalOcean. DigitalOcean's watching, so that's actually perfect timing.
Happy
Hacktoberfest. We're changing to Docker on DigitalOcean.
Cool.
But we do have so many different GitHub actions. If you go to the .github folder, you can kind of see we have different branches, but we also have like someone added Stalebot, which all they had to do was add this.
I haven't seen this. Is this like a GitHub Action version of the old Probot stale?
It is, yes, exactly.
Amazing.
And it was Stephen in our community added it, and it adds so much value because basically after the defaults, I think, are 30 days, you can configure it to more or less. In 30 days, it will close the issue if there's been no activity. And 5 days before that, it will put a comment in and saying, this is going to be closed in 5 days. Do you want to keep it or not? Therefore, all the old kind of issues get closed. And this has added so much value that we've actually added it to every repo in our organization, which is...
I'll take a little field trip here on this point, just folks who are maybe new to maintaining software on GitHub. So once upon a time, a bunch of GitHubbers made this project called Probot, which was a bot framework, very similar to the Discord bots we've been talking about, for automating workflows on GitHub. So the idea was that common activities on GitHub, you could automate them with a bot. So one of them, as Eddie said, was closing stale issues. GitHub then later released GitHub Actions, which is essentially like very configurable CI runners that sit behind GitHub that you can throw those YAMLs in that Eddie just showed us to do all kinds of different things, like running CI, running linters, doing deployments, or running bots. And one of the things we were talking about yesterday, it was like, for Probot users, at what point, like where do you continue to use Probot and where do you continue to use GitHub Actions? I'm very lazy and have continued to use Probot for everything because they're all there sitting on the Probot website and I can just install them. So I'm very excited to see someone who's taken the most commonly used Probot just being thrown into a very simple action. That's something that I was personally very curious about.
Really I didn't write that. I think it's an official action. I didn't write it. It's an official action. And it's really good. But I have written some custom actions, and GitHub Actions, it's like game changer, like proper game changer. I love it. Absolutely
with awesome. A generous free tier for everyone. So you can,
it is. Yes, it's true.
It was like 2,000 minutes or something silly. I think
yes,
actually recently got reduced. I can't remember. But,
it's really high, and we have on every project. I said before, we have not stale. We have a community action that actually runs on so many events on GitHub, and also does things like welcomes all contributors. So if they've raised an issue or raised a pull request, it will say thank you very much, but also collects the statistics. So we've got a lot of activities going on all our pull requests. And we haven't even consumed those minutes yet. So there is a very, very generous,
fantastic,
very generous tier. Absolutely. And shout out to discussions coming out on GitHub very soon, I think, for everybody, which is just a real game changer. It's going to be awesome. It's a bit like a forum on GitHub.
A new community space added to GitHub. It's filling in something that's traditionally been done on issues, but now it's really feeds into the conversation we've been having today about participating in community spaces before you try and make your contribution. GitHub discussions is going to, for the repositories and the projects that use it, means that right there in the repo, you have a place to ask questions to the maintainers to help make sure that your PR is welcome and high quality. So it's going to be a really important tool on that front. Awesome, cool. So while we've got you on screen share, one of the things we've been asking our guests is, what is your favorite open source project?
That's a really hard one because I have so many. I know a lot of people want to contribute and want to get involved in the biggest projects of 50,000 stars and 20,000 forks like React and Kubernetes and all those sorts of things. I went through a phase of that. I think it's just a phase we do as engineers. But I'm actually the opposite. I actually like contributing to smaller projects, but projects that are active. So if a project hasn't had a contribution in a long time, then I don't really want to contribute to that project. But I actually prefer smaller projects because I don't know, I just feel I can make more of an impact rather than.
That makes sense.
So I don't really have one. I just think if I find a project from Twitter, from a friend tweeting it, or from me using it, then I'll probably contribute to it.
Amazing.
I don't have one. So sorry, that sounds a bit boring.
No, that's perfect. I think it's a very good point, and it's very relevant. Again, something we touched on briefly earlier, that like there is big differences between types of open source projects, and some open source projects have corporate backing. They have companies that pay people to work on them, and others don't, and they don't have necessarily the same support. And there's mechanisms to support those people now. There's things like GitHub sponsors and Patreon. But if you're looking for like a valuable way to use your time, checking like basically the resources that the project have is like a very good point and a very good thing to look out for. Also acknowledging at the same time that the level of resources that the project has also affects their ability to look at and review your PR. So getting back to the overall theme of this show, Matt, I'm going to be very selfish while you're in chat and actually ask you a question that was asked to us that you're going to be very well placed to answer. The Hacktoberfest platform only looks at pull requests on GitHub, right? It doesn't look at merge requests on GitLab. Just going to briefly throw that out there for you, Matt, if you're still there. You could drop me an answer to that. That will help me answer this person's question.
I think that's the case, though. I do think it is only for GitHub, to my understanding.
Yeah, it'd be impossible. Yeah, just GitHub this year. Thank you very much. That will let me get them an answer. So I want to circle around on something that's interesting. This is a very new thing and something that we said in your Twitter, when we tweeted about you being on the show. You have discussions on your repo, Eddie. How do you have access to this early access feature? Are you part of some kind of program?
Yes, I'm been lucky enough and fortunate enough to be a GitHub star, where I think now there might be 18 or 20 people in the world selected out of over, I think, 44 million people on GitHub last year. So I'm a GitHub star. It means I get access to lots of awesome new features like code spaces, discussions, well before they kind of come out. Lots of beta features, which is epic. I get invited to calls with their engineers and get to even hear about more alpha features or features that haven't even come out yet. I have to sign an NDA for those, so I can't talk about those.
I was about to say I won't ask. It's okay.
But it's really nice to feel part of their team, and I really enjoy it. Unfortunately, the last few calls I've had to miss being away in Spain and other meetings, but hopefully next week, looking forward to getting back into that. They send us loads of epic swag. I mean, boxes and boxes of swag, from like big GitHub plushies, like teddy bear style things, to t-shirts, stickers. I mean, when I became a GitHub star, I got like the GitHub figurine.
The
Hopefully,
golden Octocat from Universe 2019 or whichever one it was.
so
Very nice.
loads of stuff, and I love swag, and yeah, so there's so many benefits.
Yeah.
It really is, and people keep asking how can they join this program, and you have to get nominated, and you have to get accepted. So I think it's really important for everyone just to add value to the community. And open source really isn't about code; it is about collaboration and communication and helping the community. So
for sure.
Yes, I have been in. I think a couple of years ago, I was in top 500 open source contributors in the world on GitHub, but that's not what got me through. I think it's more writing blog posts, my YouTube channel, and you don't have to do all those things, because I've seen some of the other GitHub stars. They don't have a very active GitHub account, but they have an amazing blogging history and profile that they do. Or some of the others do live streams, and some do YouTube videos, and some do. It can be anything. It doesn't have to be kind of open source focused, but it needs to be community focused and adding value. So yeah, definitely.
It's a very good point that we also had in the chat earlier from Pepin, which was the green squares on your profile don't necessarily represent your worth as a developer or programmer, and it's definitely something that is very spoken about by folks at GitHub themselves. And also there's a whole bunch of reasons you wouldn't have green squares in that profile, not just because you're doing other kinds of valuable activities like community advocacy, but also because you work for a private project, or your project uses another version control system, or it's not on GitHub. There's a million and one reasons that those green squares and your number of contributions aren't a super important thing. That sounds like a really fascinating program. What are the other kinds of people on the program?
Let me bring it up. So the URL to go to is I think it's just stars.github.com, and then here are some of the people we've got, which is really, really great. And it's great to be in a Slack with all of these people and the GitHub engineers.
A lot of these pictures.
Yeah, so it's really, really awesome. I mean, loads of great people. Jonathan is really active in the GitHub Slack, which is great, and it's great to see people from around the world and the different challenges that they have. I was watching a live stream with Monica yesterday, and it's really good. And I've been able to connect with the GitHub engineers. I've got Brian from GitHub coming on a live stream with me on my channel.
Going to be with us in.
Oh, really? Also, he's brilliant.
He's wonderful. He's 6th of October next week.
Well, I look forward to watching that.
4 p.m. CEST slot. We should, that's awesome. So I guess to jump off from this, as you were talking about, the other things that are useful and valuable in open source aside from code, what are some of the resources that you found really valuable when you were getting your start? What did some of those resources look like? Where did you go to find those kind of things?
I don't think there were many resources back in the day. Free Code Camp have a good repo with suggestions as well, which is really good. With 24 pull requests, your first pull request, I think .org, and there are some good resources. But back when I started, there wasn't any, and so. That was there was a lot harder back then, and it was kind of speaking more to people at events. I think it was more event focused, which was, I guess, one of the downsides was it was people in your physical local area. Because right at the beginning, when I got into open source, I was going to events, but only more local events rather than more like now, well, not now, but say last year and earlier this year, for example. Going to events all around Europe and all around the world. So it was more limited.
Much wider
back
reach.
then. Now the reach is massive. I don't think, COVID has been devastating for so many reasons, but one of the positive is it's encouraged people to go online and virtual and be more inclusive. I see so many meetups that are, meetup A in New York or meetup B in London, but then actually loads of people from all around the world joining now because they're interested in that topic and that technology. And so, I think that's definitely a positive that's come out.
Absolutely. And I think the Hacktoberfest virtual events page is a great example of that, where Hacktoberfest events started a couple of years ago. They're definitely not as old as the format itself or the official events anyway. And they were always a great resource. And to now just see so many hundreds of events that can be tuned into virtually on the website, it's super neat. So we are getting close to time. Do you have any final bits of advice or things we haven't touched on that you wanted to talk about? Any things you wanted to, like resources you want to point folks to or anything like that?
So many things I'd like to say, but I think we'll be here till tomorrow and everyone will probably fall asleep. Sure. So I guess I'd like to close with everyone contribute to open source. And by that, I don't just mean a code. I don't just mean pull requests. Get involved in the conversation, as Joe has been saying, on any platform. And if you're not sure where to contribute, I have given some tips along with that, but also just get started and then you'll find some people are waiting for the perfect project. I think you need to get started and then people will discover you and then you'll discover other people, other projects, and then you'll have a different problem, which is, you have so many projects you want to contribute to because there's so many perfect projects that, you'll have to then prioritize. But that's a good problem to have. Definitely get involved in the conversation and it will help your career. I have learned so much from the open source community, from chatting on Discord, on GitHub with people, and has really accelerated my career. And it's, got me in touch with so many companies. All the clients I get and the job offers I get have been from people in the community. I mean, I haven't used recruiters in probably like almost a decade. and that's really helped. It's so nice to have, people coming up to you and say, hey, we love what you do. Can you come work with us on X, Y, and Z? And it's such a nice feeling. Yeah. And so, if people do want to accelerate, I see people trying to take shortcuts. I don't think there are shortcuts. It's definitely a marathon, not a sprint. Yeah. But if you keep kind of going and pushing forwards, then you'll see kind of the shortcuts later on, like before you know it. People try and think too much in the macro. I think if you look in the micro and you think, right, today or this weekend, let me make one improvement or one value add to the community and just try and do little and often. And then when you look back over the 6 months, a year, 2 years, it would have grown their skills and their community so much. And one example I like to give is like brushing your teeth. It's
okay. I'm intrigued.
It's like we brush our teeth every day, right? Once a day, twice a day, 3 times a day. Everyone's slightly different, but we brush our teeth every day. Yeah. And if you miss a day because you're tired or you're, ended up being at a friend's house or whatever, your teeth aren't going to fall out. They're not going to go yellow.
Yeah.
But over the years, brushing your teeth every day has added so much value. It's given your teeth, you kept them healthy and so forth. So I believe open source and community is like that, in that do little and often, and then over the years, people will have the jobs that they want. They'll have the clients that they want and the money that they want, and they'll love what they do because it will kind of, they'll be able to then pick from the pool of jobs that they want to work on. Therefore, they're kind of not jobs, they're not work, they're hobby. I mean, I love it that I can call my what I do a hobby and I get paid to do it. It's like when we went to Spain the other week with the wife, and she's like, on the last day of the holiday, she said, it's the last day of the holiday, I'll go back to work. I'm like, yes, it's the last day of the holiday, I get to go back to work. And my wife's like, hate you so much. So, I want other people to be like that. I want other people to love what they do. And I think tech allows us to do that, not because all of tech is great, right? Someone might like to blog, someone might like to code, someone might like to write documentation, someone might do videos. But when you kind of get into it and you have this a bit more, I don't know, not authority is the wrong word, but the employers or the hiring managers kind of can see where you excel. They want to harness that. And people excel because they're good at it. They get good at it because they enjoy it. And then other people want you to do that for them and pay you well for it. I don't know how to explain that very well, but hopefully that kind of makes sense.
I think that makes total sense. That's awesome. I think that's some great advice to end today's show with. Get out there, make some contributions that are well formed and welcome with all the wonderful advice that Eddie has given us today, and hopefully it will contribute to your career as well. Well, thank you so much, Eddie, for being on the show. You've got your socials scroll along the bottom, so you know where to find Eddie. We've also put out links to Eddie's stuff on our Twitter, and we'll put out the link to his YouTube again. You said your live stream, when's your next stream on?
I have definitely everyone scheduled in. I think it's next Thursday with Gwen Faraday, who has a YouTube channel as well. And she's going to take me through Vue. So I had Debbie from Nux.js last week. We went through Nux, which gave me an intro into Vue and so forth. So yes, but lots of open source live streams and videos coming out. I actually might do a funny one on some of the silly pull requests that people have created. I don't know. I'm thinking about it. It might be a bit too sensitive. I don't know.
I know. I think it'll be nice to get something lighthearted out of this.
Yeah, I think so. It will be funny
Yeah.
with some silly music and sound effects and all the rest.
Yeah,
so,
for sure. Awesome.
yeah,
I'm sure we'll all
awesome.
look back
Thank
on this
you.
next year and laugh. Anyway, yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah.
I will remove you from the stream now to do our wrap up. But thank you so much, Eddie.
Awesome. Thank you for having me on your channel. Have a great day, everyone.
Okay, everyone, that was our first show of the day. Thank you again to Eddie, and thank you all for being here and watching and for being in the chat and engaging with us. I want to briefly run you through what we've got in store for the rest of the day and how you can get involved. So, first up, if you have any questions about Hacktoberfest, whether they be big or small, that we can help with, we're talking about high-level things like what we discussed here on the show today. How do I make a good pull request? How do I make sure it doesn't get marked as invalid? How do I contribute value to a project? If you've got questions like that, we can help. Or if you've got very specific questions, we've got into a bit of code today. Eddie walked us through the adapter pattern, and we spoke about Discord bots. We would love to do this with things that you need help with. If you've got an explicit issue that like, hey, I've started this pull request and I'm having problems with this error message, even as fine as that, we want to help with that as well. And how it works is you go to raise.dev and submit your questions. We will review those questions and we'll find a guest who can help you. We'll let you know when your question will be answered on the show, and we'll even send you the recording afterwards once we've answered your questions. So you can submit those to raise.dev. It will ask you about your question, and it will also let you put in links to issues and pull requests, and even forks and branches. So please submit your questions there. As you've seen in the chat as well, you can also just drop in and have a chat with us as we go. Also on that page, you will find a little sign up box to subscribe for notifications when we go live. That means that at the end of each week, we'll send you the week's schedule, and at the start of each day, we'll send you the schedule of who we've got on for that day. If you want to go look at who we've got on next just by yourself, you can go on over to our Twitch schedule at twitch.tv raisdevs schedule. That schedule is updated weekly, so currently it's showing the schedule for today. This weekend, we'll get the schedule up for next week as well. Actually, I think I could probably put that up today. But we've got some great guests on next week. We already mentioned some of them earlier. We've got Brian Douglas on Tuesday. Monday, we've got Jacob and Sukrit, who are both alumni from the Raise.dev programs. That's going to be really fascinating. We've got our first session with Dev2 next Tuesday as well. Dev2 are going to be coming on the show with Nick Taylor, and they're going to be working through some issues on the forum project. So that's going to be super exciting. I'm very, very excited to watch that. So we'll be putting up that schedule soon. And just a final message about Raise.dev. As I mentioned, Raise.dev is a service to help you level up your career, whether you're looking for your first developer job or you're looking to move on or get promoted in some capacity. You can go to Raise.dev and sign up whilst you're in early access for a free coaching. Basically, you can have a kickoff call with one of our coaches who will help you find a project, and you'll be able to advance your careers together. So you can go and apply to that at raise.dev. If you're intrigued about what that is and how this coaching thing works, our next guest on at 4 p.m. Central European Standard Time is Qingqing Liu. Qingqing was part of our pilot program. So Qingqing has been through raise.dev previously, and at the end of that ended up getting a job and is working currently as a Ruby backend engineer. So Qingqing is going to be a great one. A great show to hear more about Raise.dev as well. I'm sure we'll get into that and her journey. So that is everything from me. Again, thank you all so much for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.